Hi. For many Americans, April 30th may be just another day. But for millions of Vietnamese families, April 30th, 1975 marks the fall of Saigon, the day a country changed forever. This is not about war. It's about the trauma, survival, displacement, and rebuilding. Today, I want to talk about what was left behind and what the Vietnamese people built from that pain. What happened on April 30th, 1975? This day marks the fall of Saigon, and the end of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a war between the North and the South of Vietnam. Vietnam sits below China and it is a country as an S. So it's mostly coastal and ocean. It was ruled by the Chinese for over thousands of years. And in the late 1800s, the French came in and colonized Vietnam. The French loved Vietnam. They brought the Catholic missionaries there. They built French villas in recreational areas in Vietnam. And they brought language to Vietnam. Vietnam is the only Asian country that has the Roman alphabet. So it's very easy to learn. It's used widely now. But on April 30th, 1975, the communists was moving in from the north and they wanted to take over the south. So the US came in to help in the 70s and they stayed for a couple years. But on April 30th, 1975, everything came to a sudden halt and everything went just blank. The US military, went through withdrawal and the troops left. Helicopters flew out and it was a collapse of South Vietnam. People left behind their families. There was chaos and fear as people tried to escape and run off with Americans and get on planes. They escaped by boat. The refugees escaped by boats, helicopters, and on foot. Everyone was just, it was a big chaotic day. And many of the people who were supporting the South Vietnam were captured by the government of the North Vietnam, and they were sent in imprisonment or re-education camps. They were kept in these camps for years. I don't think it was until 10 years before they were let go and they were allowed to come to America. For many Vietnamese, this was not liberation. The communists is not liberation. There's no democracy. It was a loss of homeland, freedom, identity, and family structure. There was a lot of devastation left behind after the Americans left. The biggest problem that we have in our country is Agent Orange and chemical warfare. Chemical warfare is very dangerous because it causes chemicals to fly into the air. It pollutes the water that we drink. It seeps into the ground and it poisons all the crops. Agent Orange has had health consequences across the generations. Children are born with birth defects and disabilities. But the Americans have denied all the facts. They won't admit that these things happen. And there's civilian trauma. There, when the Americans came into the Vietnam, they didn't have any idea of how to fight the North. The North Vietnam, the Viet Cong, had dug tunnels from the north to the south. They have a wide network of tunnels that connect down to the south. So they were attacking in the middle of nowhere. They would come up from the tunnels. I saw those tunnels myself when I went to Vietnam when I was 14. There was no way the US could have won that war. But they had so much violence. US troops raided villages and raped women. That's the trauma that was left behind. And children were fathered by foreign soldiers. So they were discriminated by. They faced a lot of stigma and they were abandoned. They lived like poor people on the streets. They had to find a way to make money very young. War just hurts civilians, especially women and children. We need to find a way to bring peace to this world. American Asian children and mixed Vietnamese families have often faced prejudice and severe prejudice for their whiteness and their look like Americans. They don't blend in to the Vietnamese who are short and darker skinned and heavy hair. Mixed Asian children are beautiful, and Vietnamese people hate beautiful children. In Vietnamese culture, they never tell you you are beautiful. They were called derogatory names and they were treated as outsiders. Do you know what children do to other children in Vietnam? They call them names, they throw rocks at them, and they beat them up. You have to be tough. When I went back to Vietnam, I was 14, and these kids pointed at me on the street and called me a big baby in Vietnamese. They're rude. A lot of these American Asian children and their Vietnamese mothers lived in poverty, shame, and social exclusion. They became prostitutes of the society. They became business builders. but many of them were very poor. They came to America because in 1987, American Nation Homecoming Act allowed many of them to immigrate with their families in the US. For that reason, many Vietnamese men would marry these children so they could come to America. They face violence in their marriages. I've heard so many stories. I've witnessed so many things. They're so lucky to be free. These children did not choose war, but they carried the consequences for years. Rebuilding in America is what I'm so proud of them for. Vietnamese refugees arrived in waves in the US. By the acts, by family sponsorship, they came in every couple of years, a new generation of a wave of new Vietnamese people came in. And they were very different because they didn't come by boat. My parents came by boat. They escaped Vietnam in the early 1980s. I was born in 1983, so they probably left Vietnam in 1981 or 80. And my grandfather paid an oracle to tell him what boat to choose and what night that boat was leaving. They left on a new moon where there was no light reflecting the ocean, so the communists couldn't catch them. Because if you were caught, you were killed for escaping the communists. My grandfather sent three of his children, my mom, my uncle, and my aunt. My mom's the oldest. And between my mom and my uncle is a 10-year difference. So it's almost like her son. He didn't know anything. He was just barely in high school. And my father came from another family, and he came on the boat, and my mom and my father met on the boat. But my grandfather used an oracle to protect the boat so that my parents and his family could escape safely. The Vietnamese culture is all about energy astrology. It dates its roots from Chinese culture. Everything is done in astrology, partnerships, marriages, friends, business partners. Everything comes down to astrology. So my parents came to America, but they didn't just come off the boat and came to America the next day. They escaped in the middle of the night and they floated in the ocean for 8 days and 8 nights. They ran out of water and food, and they were robbed by pirates twice. Yeah. There were Thailand pirates that roamed the ocean and robbed the boats because the pirates had bigger boats than they had. And my parents went in a boat that was very small. It held 15 to 20 people. So it was a very small boat in the middle of the ocean. But they made it to Thailand in 8 days and they weren't greeted by the Thai. The Thai set them up in camps on the beach and gave them scraps to eat. They worked very hard to find something to make money. My mom knew how to sew, so she took on sewing projects and she cooked. And the stories they told me all when I was growing up, they really worked hard to build a life for themselves because they left everything behind. They spent 6, 7 months in Thai and they went to Malaysia and then they were sponsored to the US by their families. My mom was sponsored to Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, by her friend, and she was very supported by the community here. And they face the Vietnamese refugees here were very close knit. Everyone knew each other. We went to the same local market. We um got together on the weekend and we knew everybody. So some of the problems that they face growing up with settling down in America is the language barrier. They couldn't communicate, and Vietnamese people communicate very differently than Americans. And for that reason, it has caused a lot of misunderstanding. I met a psychologist who worked in San Diego during the time that the Vietnamese refugees came into the US. And he told me stories about how the doctors would describe and write notes in the medical records that they were criminals because they would avoid eye contact and they didn't know how to answer any of the questions. In Vietnamese culture, you don't look people in the eye. It's only reserved for your husband. You don't look at people in the eye. But in America, you have to hold contact with people. This was a big difference I found working between minorities and Americans. The Vietnamese refugees started in poverty. They came here and they relied on government programs. They worked all odds and end jobs in restaurants, supermarkets. I know a family that worked in cornfields, picking corn every summer, and they saved their money and they built a life for themselves. And in the 1990s, they opened a computer store and they were fixing computers. They had money to invest. I learned a lot because I spent a lot of time at their house. The mother loved to cook because she made very good food. Vietnamese food is so warm and comforting. Despite all the trauma that they faced and the prejudice that they faced here in America, they had a community and a network of friends and support. The old refugees, the original families, I'm part of the original families in Hartford. We welcomed the next wave of Vietnamese people into the community and helped them get paperwork, get government benefits, housing, and jobs. Organizations popped up to help the Vietnamese. And when the American Asian children came over, they worked in factories and eventually they started to build nail salons, restaurants, and small businesses around the local area. They had video shops. There was a video shop in Hartford, and everyone came to that video shop on the weekends when the new episodes came out. Vietnamese people watch dramas and movies that are translated and dubbed from Chinese, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Thai, Korean, Japanese. So we watched all of that. And they're very long dramas. They can be from 20 episodes, which are hour long, to maybe 60 episodes, depending on what you're watching. And it was a range of all genres, science fiction, history of China, emperors and dynasties, and the jealousies and the drama that happened in royal palace. I think that's really what I'm in love with, the Chinese culture, because that's what I grew up watching. Graham's Emperor with all his wives. That's another story. Today is about Vietnam and celebrating what we built on after the war, after the pain and the trauma that we went through. We have gone from refugee camps to business owners, and we have built our families in America with strong values. Our sacrifices have gotten our children into high education. I know my friends and their children go to the top schools in major cities. Yale, Northeastern University, New York University. They worked very hard. So they went from survival mode to raising doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and executives. These children work as executives in major corporations across America, and they have built empires and businesses in their local communities. They have gone from nail salons to multimillionaires. My friend went from Connecticut to Texas, and she went from the working in the nail salon to working in real estate, selling $500,000 houses now. And this is the only beginning for her. It's a lot. We have a lot of history. We have a lot of love for our family and our community. We have, I'm first generation in America. I'm the first generation. I've gone to college, I've gone to MBA, I went to the top schools, and I've worked in the reinsurance industry, which is a $1 billion industry by the time I was 25 years old. If you've seen Crazy Asian, Rich Asians, it came out in 2018. You get a peek of what our life is like. I want to talk about second generation pride because I want to connect to the children that are growing up today. The Vietnamese Americans are balancing two identities, and they need to understand their history so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. Vietnamese culture is a very deep culture rooted in family and their children. The Vietnamese parents love their children very deeply. They sacrifice a lot for their children, but they can't. They have communication problems with their children because their children don't speak Vietnamese sometimes. Or sometimes they speak Vietnamese and they handle a lot of the family business and the family operations. They have pride and resilience and culture and opportunity. The world is endless opportunities for these children because they have a strong foundation. The Vietnamese community has been the most successful immigrant community in the US, with high level executives working in industries like aerospace, insurance, reinsurance. And a lot of them are really stuck in the mid-level management and they are rising to be, they need an opportunity to come up to rise as leaders because they have been leading their own family for a very long time. There's many success stories. In 2014, I came across a project gathering stories of Vietnamese, North American Vietnamese in the US and Canada. It was a collection of 70 to 100 stories, and I wrote my story and my life and my success and my intentions to help my community rise again. It's published on Amazon. You should read it. If you love the Vietnamese community, you will love this book because it shares raw, honest stories of the struggles that these people have faced in the US and Canada. But not only are those the stories that they have faced, other immigrants face the same challenges. Sharing these stories, we can share that there's proof that pain can become power. You can start with nothing and still rise when you address your pain and you let go of it and you shift from survival to thriving. April 30th is a reminder of what was lost, but also what was built. We honor the suffering, the mothers, the refugees, the abandoned children, the survivors. And today we stand proud, Vietnamese, American, resilient. I have learned so much in the years that I have spent here in America and traveled across the different countries. I'm so grateful the opportunities that I have as an American. Because I'm born as a US American, I had women's rights. I took every opportunity to educate myself. Art classes, music classes, pianos. High school was every class, every summer, AP classes. And the community rewarded me. The community invested in me. I won 10 scholarships that bridged the gap for my tuition. I was able to go to New York University my first year, which was $33,000 a year, including room and board. But the experience I had shaped my whole life, and I owe it to my community for supporting me. West Hartford has a very good education program, and Hartford had a public giving foundation. I found the book of scholarships in the library, and I applied to all the scholarships I qualified for. There were 6 or 7 scholarships, and I won 5 of them. That's how strongly they believed in me. And I'm so proud to be who I am today. If I wasn't in America, I wouldn't have the same opportunities. I'm sharing this story because I want to inspire you for the opportunities you have in America. You can put away your pain and your struggles and fight for your life. You have a right to live with freedom. Freedom is for everyone. Every human should have freedom. This is what being a Vietnamese American means to me. What does being a Vietnamese American mean to you? Comment in the comments if you like what you hear, if you want to listen to more content and more stories, subscribe to my channel and read the description for more ways to connect with me. Thank you. My name is Betty Dang, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak to you.